Hello, everyone, and welcome to this video and to our class. The purpose of this video is to give you a brief introduction of who I am and my background. I know it's really hard with online classes to get to know your professor, and so I wanted to give you a brief introduction of who I am and for you to be at least able to put a name to the face and know who is the person that is going to be communicating with you and experiencing the course with you throughout the semester. So I'm a visual person, so I like to use visuals whenever I do a recording. Also because I don't particularly like to see myself on camera. So I'll share this brief little presentation that I've created to go along with my introduction of who I am. So my name's Elizabeth Garcia. I'm a clinical associate teaching professor in the Ethnic Studies department here at CU Denver. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I prefer to be referred to as either Professor or Dr. Garcia. So my cultural background, I was born in New York of working class Puerto Rican parents, and I was raised in the Bronx, Puerto Rico, and Miami, Florida. We moved quite a lot as I was growing up. I have also lived in different places, both in the East Coast and the West Coast. And the reason why I share these things is because it gives me a unique perspective, not just from studying Latinx populations in the United States, but also from having lived in many of the different regions where we find a lot of those populations. So for example, in Miami, Florida, I grew up with a lot of Cuban Americans. In the West Coast, when I was going to school in California, I got to really experience what it means to be Chicano in California. And so all of these experiences have informed my understanding and appreciation of the various different Latinx groups that are here in the United States. My educational background, I earned my bachelor's at Brown University, which is in Providence, Rhode Island. I double majored in American Studies and Business Economics. I was a first-generation college student, which means that I was the first person in my family to go to college. And while there, I was very involved in the various Latino student organizations. And the image there is the college seal for Brown University. I then earned my master's and my doctorate in ethnic studies at the University of California, Berkeley. So that kind of covers the time period that I was in California. My family life, I'm a mom to one daughter who's now 23 years old. I'm also wife to Vice Chancellor of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion on campus, Antonio Farias. Maybe some of you have heard of him or have met him. I'm also mom to this adorable Labradoodle called Basil. And so the images you see there, one is with my husband and my daughter. I think this was at Garden of the Gods like 5 years ago when she was just visiting colleges and deciding where she wanted to go. And she ended up going to Colorado College down in the Springs. And the image there, of course, is of my dog baby, Basil. My research and sort of my additional work duties on campus, my research focuses on Latinx literature and history, which explains many of the types of courses that I teach here at CU Denver. I published my first book, Healing Memories, Puerto Rican Women's Literature in the United States, a few years ago. Here on campus, in addition to teaching various courses, I am also the advisor to the Latinx Studies Certificate, which we offer in the Ethnic Studies department. And if you've taken any of the Latinx Studies courses that I've taught in the past or are currently in some of these courses and are interested in learning more about the Latinx Studies Certificate, let me know, and I'm happy, I'm happy to meet with you and go over what those requirements are. So as I mentioned, I got my PhD in ethnic studies. And so the question, of course, comes up, why did I choose to do ethnic studies as my master's and doctorate? And the reason was because as an undergraduate student, many, many years ago, there was only one Latino studies professor in the entire campus. The reason why I majored in American studies is because there was no Latino studies or ethnic studies at the university I attended. American studies was a very small program, and that's where I found all the courses that related to people of color, women and gender. The kinds of courses that I was really interested in were housed there. And I realized how important it was not just to learn about different people of color in the United States, but the more I read, the more I realized that this was an important history and experience that was not being taught anywhere else. I also, at my campus, there were not very many faculty of color at all. There was maybe one or two Latinx faculty in the entire campus. And I realized how important having those two people was to me. And I wanted to be that person in the future for future students. I also got very passionate about studying Latinx studies and Latinx literature in particular, because one of the first novels that I read by a Latina author was a novel called Nilda by Nicolás Amor, who's a Puerto Rican woman. And when I read that novel, I finally felt like my entire life experience was being represented. And it was very rare, especially at that time, to see books, to see literature that represented experiences that I could relate to. And so I really wanted to continue to read those things, continue to study them, but also to teach courses that made that kind of literature and that history visible to other students. And so what has resulted is in over 20 years of working in higher education, teaching either ethnic studies or Latinx studies or women and gender studies, which I have taught at various different institutions, and also working as a dean of multicultural affairs for a few years at one small college, and really dedicating my entire career to advocating, mentoring, and educating around ethnic studies and the experiences of Latinx people in the United States. So I hope that this gives you a little bit of an understanding of where I'm coming from when I'm teaching these courses, a little bit about my background. I'd be happy to talk to you about any of the experiences that I've had, especially for those that you may relate to and might have questions about. I'm very passionate about advocating for students of color and for mentoring students in general, especially students that are interested in ethnic studies as a field. So that's who I am in a nutshell. I'm happy to tell you more if you'd like to meet at some point. But hopefully this gives you a sense of who I am, where I'm coming from, and who is sort of this invisible online professor that you're going to have all semester. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.